Hello fellow cinephiles, the Film Dude here. Thanks for joining me today. So today I'll be looking at a couple of new films that came out. Two films that really I was really impressed with, didn't know I was going to like, but really ended up loving. And those two films are Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey and Spider-Man Brand New Day. Well, I'll start with The Odyssey. This was a film I wasn't quite completely sure about, as I didn't mind Oppenheimer, but I hadn't really loved one of Christopher Nolan's films in a while. I thought Tenet was okay. I didn't really care much for Dunkirk. And so I was a bit kind of iffy going into this one. Not iffy, but I wasn't quite sure what to expect or what was going to happen in it and whether I was going to like it or not. And being a period film isn't something I always enjoy, but the story interests me. The Odyssey, Homer's The Odyssey has always been an interesting story to me. I've read bits and pieces of it. Haven't read the whole thing, so I was intrigued enough and knew the journey enough to really have a bit of excitement or at least a bit of interest in the film itself. And I was absolutely blown away by this film. It was epic, it was practical. When we see the Cyclops, it's a 60 feet puppet, which I thought was really interesting. Just the practicality that Christopher Nolan brought to it, as he always does with his films, was really impressive. The cast was really great, a huge cast, and all of them did a great job. I think the the performances I liked the most was from Matt Damon playing Odysseus. He was really great. It had been a while since he had a lead role, and I really enjoyed what he did with the film. His character was fascinating. He was a character we really wanted to go on a journey with. And there was sort of a myth about him. I kind of liked that. Whenever we met characters who didn't really know who he was or had some sort of experience with him, they'd tell a perception of him, the perception that they saw and they experienced. So it sort of creates this real myth about him before we even meet him, that we don't really know what we're going to get or what we're going to expect him to be like. And I kind of liked that. I thought it was really interesting. His performance is fantastic, probably the best performance of his career, or at least in a very long time. And I really love what he brought to it. I love the physicality that he brought and the sort of likableness and just how the character was on this sort of huge journey and blamed himself for a lot of things and felt responsible. It just felt relatable in many aspects, and I really loved that. And the other standout to me was Zendaya as Athena. I just really loved her performance in it. She's not in it much, but when she is in it, you pay attention. Her character, Athena, is a very fascinating character within the story, and I liked her relationship and connection that she had with Odysseus. And I really loved their sort of bond, so to speak. He's the only one who could really see her, but there's still a connection there. And her performance is great. And every word, everything she said and did was just fantastic. And I really loved her in the film. And those two were the real standouts for me. But I think that just in the production value, the fact that it was the first film ever shot completely on IMAX was impressive. Just the sets, when we see the horse, the famous Trojan horse, and how that looks and how that's built and how big it actually is. It's just really great. Every aspect of it, everything, every person he interacted with, like Samantha Morton was really great. And what that character did and transformed the soldiers into animals was really effective and very practically done, which I loved. Even like when he goes up against the Cyclops or in the storms that they face on the water in the ship, what he experiences, where he ends up on the island and Charlize Theron's character's there, it's just all very practical and real, and it shows something that a lot of the other films didn't do in my opinion. Yes, they're big and they're grandeur, all the sort of films that are made about this story, and they're all very of their time, and they used practical aspects to it, but there was sort of the old school techniques. This felt much more grounded, much more real. Even when we go to, where the soldiers go to Hades, so to speak, and what they have to do there, and it's just sort of a flat bit of like dirt out in the middle of nowhere. And I really loved that, and just how we get to see the spirits return, these soldiers that have died, where they come out of the ground. Performance here that I really loved by Elliot Page. He's really great in this sequence. There's a power, there's a heart, there's a beauty to the performance. And this is the first thing I've seen Elliot Page do since transitioning and sort of the roles that he's ultimately trying to take on. And this was a really great starting point. I think his performance is really great. It shows the skill of him as an actor that we've always known. And he gets to play a character that adds a lot of heart and depth to this particular sequence. And there's so many sequences throughout it that just blew me away. It was a film that I was just hooked onto. I connected to. I went on the journey as the characters went on the journey, and I felt I was part of it. And there was emotional aspects to the film that had a real impact on me. I haven't been immersed in a film like this in such a long time that it just sort of sucked me in, and I just loved every aspect of it. While the only nitpick I had was I was more interested in the Odysseus journey than I was in the other aspects of the film. They all played a point and purpose. We had to show his life the life that he was missing at home, and the impact of him being gone, and how that sort of has impact on him and also on his family. And just how like he goes on such a journey that we go on such a journey. And like I said, there's sequences that surprised me and had impact. And I really love where he has to tie the bow to shoot the arrow at the end. That is fantastic. It's a film that slowly builds, but when we get to the last, 20, 30 minutes, it's just a relentless speed. And the stories were told, and it's like Odysseus gets to tell his version of what happened at Troy, and how intense it is, and how it just builds and builds and builds. And the same can be said about the sequence where he only shows up with the bow and arrow to take down the suitors of his wife and to prove himself once again. It just builds, the music's powerful. There's just so much that I really loved about this film. It's on my top 10. It's a film that I was really impressed with and blown away. I know it's had slight people haven't liked it ultimately, but I really loved it, and I felt connected to it, and I felt immersed in it, and I felt I couldn't look away. And it's the first one I've been completely captivated by, and feel like I'm part of the story. And I want to talk a little bit about that, because this film had an impact on me. I don't usually do new films on this channel, only because you get hit with copyright infringements and all sorts of issues. So I thought I would pick a couple of films and talk about them and the impact that they had on me as a film watcher and also as a human being. And this film I do highly recommend if you haven't seen it. I really love this movie, and it is definitely worth checking out. And you have to see it on the big screen, whether you see it in IMAX like Nolan originally wanted, or you see it on a normal screen. You definitely need to see it in the cinema. Like I mentioned, the second film that I was really impressed with is Spider-Man Brand New Day. Now, I'm a big fan of the Tobey Maguire, Sam Raimi Spider-Mans that came out in the early 2000s. I think Tobey Maguire is definitely my Spider-Man. I really love what he does in those films, and I love the character he plays, and I love that we get to see him in the third iteration of the new Spider-Man with Tom Holland. I really loved that aspect as well. And while I liked aspects of the first three films in this series, and this being the fourth, even though there's aspects of those previous three films that I liked, I never really loved them. The third one's probably the only one I really got connected to, but there's a lot of nostalgia with that, and there was a lot of connecting universes and choices made, and showing a similar... By the end of it, showing a different Peter Parker that we'd seen in the previous two films, and I liked that aspect of it. So when they announced that there was going to be a fourth one, I was a bit iffy. And then when they announced it was a different director, I didn't know what to expect, because Dustin is a director, he did Shang-Chi and a couple other things, and I wasn't sure what he was going to bring to it, and I didn't really know if I wanted to go on a journey once again with Spider-Man, since we've been on such a journey with the previous three films, and obviously the other Spider-Man iterations that we've had through the years. So I was unsure how I felt about this, and the trailers were interesting, but they weren't giving me enough to really make a calculated decision on whether I was really going to like this film or not. So ultimately I went to it, and I was so surprised how much I really liked this film. I think the new Dustin did a great job. I like the idea of having a new director, and it really shows that the director of the previous three didn't have really a style, didn't really have a way of portraying the character in a believable way, or a way that I connected to. Where this version of the character just felt so much more grounded, like the movie itself, and much more real in a certain aspect. And we weren't going through Peter Parker being a child anymore and learning to be a man and all that sort of stuff, and all the teenage angst and issues that come with that. He was an adult when we meet him, ultimately. Still kid-like, but it's moving on with his life, and he's fully becoming Spider-Man. And we're in the city, and it just, there were so many aspects to this film that were reminiscent of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2. Just about questioning who he is, struggling to accept different sides of himself, and trying to let go of one thing in order to do something else, and just the journey that he goes on and learns to accept himself in the end. Both sides of him and who he completely is. And I thought that was really great. I was worried about how the Punisher was going to fit into this world, because just because he's a character that's a bit darker than Spider-Man. But it really worked. The way they worked him into it worked really well. Sadie Sink and her performance and the character she's playing was really great as well. There were so many aspects to the film I really loved. The action itself felt much more practical. There was a lot more stunt work happening. There was Jackie Chan's stunt team who was involved in it. Tom Holland was doing a lot of his own stunts. He ultimately got injured on doing one particular one, hitting his head too onto the ground. But all of these aspects and elements add so much to the movie. Yes, there are a couple of things like Yelena. I'm not sure why her character needs to be in that film. It just feels like she's setting up for something later to come. And Bruce Banner serves a purpose, but he doesn't ultimately completely need to be there. But it works for what they're going for. And they're not in it a whole lot, but they're in it to serve certain points of the story, which is fair enough. But that's the only real nitpicks I have of it. I like the way they handled MJ and Ned coming back into Peter Parker's life after the events of what happened, and how MJ can't see him the same way because she's not the same person anymore. The relationship between Spider-Man and the Punisher is fantastic. It's probably the heart and soul of the film in a lot of ways. And Sadie Sink is really great. What I do with her character, the character she plays in the film, and the aspect of where they could really go with that sort of franchise, those sort of heroes that she's part of, could really, if it went forward like this film, it could be very grounded and real and interesting. Less darker than the other X-Men movies that we've had, and something that could be sort of in the middle and could really work and be kind of really beautiful and interesting. And I look forward to seeing what they ultimately do with her character, if she still plays the character she's playing in the next iteration of those characters. I hope they do it like that, and if they do it much like this film, I think it would be really, really, really well done. This is, to me, the best Marvel film that we've had since Endgame. I like the Marvels, but this is probably the best overall superhero Marvel film we've had since then. I think the characters are really great. I think Tom Holland's really good and really understands Spider-Man now. Like I mentioned, it's much more grounded. The fights and things are a bit more practical and less CGI, where the last couple of Spider-Man films just felt like we're seeing a CGI character jumping around, shooting webs or whatever, where this felt like it was real. You know what I mean? Like, we're just getting to the point of him becoming the Peter Parker that everyone knows, living in the city, working in the newspaper, all of those sort of things. And whether they go down that track or not, I'm not sure. But it just feels like the Peter Parker we've always known. And I know that we had to have the teen years, the younger years, and they have to show his evolution as a character and how he becomes who he becomes. But this felt much more the Spider-Man I've always known. The conflict, the struggle he goes through, the journey he goes on, the the relationships he has formed with people in his life, and how he's learnt from them, and how he is a very interesting and fascinating character who's willing to sacrifice himself in order to save others. It's just a really impressive film that connected to me on an emotional and intellectual level. There's a lot going on in it, and sometimes it does feel like there's too much going on and too many characters, but it is serving a purpose, and it's just the way it's done that I really connected to it, and I'm not surprised it's doing really well in the box office. It is my favourite of the Tom Holland Spider-Mans, and it's on par with Spider-Man 2, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, which I personally think is the best iteration of Spider-Man. But this comes very close, just in the experience I had, how much I enjoyed it, the choices made in it, and just the evolution of Peter Parker and Spider-Man, and how they sort of do that, and how grounded this film is. I know I've said grounded a few times, but that's kind of the best way to describe it. And it feels a little more gritty, where the other previous films, except for, when Aunt May dies, all feel a bit fun and light-hearted, which is fine. The Raimi films have had those as well. But this, being a bit more gritty and grounded, just felt more accessible and more interesting. And I always find, especially with Spider-Man, or any other hero really, when they're up against it is when they're the most interesting. It just feels better that way, and I really like that. And it just feels like where there's conflict, it makes much more interesting viewing. So these two films had an impact on me, definitely two of the best films of the year. For a year that's felt like completely like the whole year's been January, where they put out the crappy movies usually in January, or they used to anyway. And the whole year's felt like that, with only a handful of exceptions. And these two are definitely the two films that stand out the most to me. They're the two films you really need to see in the cinema. And I just feel like if more films could be like these ones, we could have had a really great year of cinema. So if you've seen these films, let me know in the comments below what you thought of them, whether you liked them, disliked them, what you liked about them, what you didn't. And if you haven't seen them, I highly recommend them. Anyway, that's it. That's all for me today. Thanks for joining me. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe down the bottom, follow me on Letterboxd and Facebook. Otherwise, until next time, enjoy the movies.